You're listening to the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Podcast, the place where faith, music, and life intersect. We exist to help Christian indie artists and songwriters just like you get songs heard. All right, I'm here with my friends Nate and Abe coming to us live all the way from Maine. How you guys doing tonight?
So good.
Yeah, we're
awesome.
so good.
Chilly,
thanks for having us.
Really good.
Awesome. Well, I introduced you guys, but the name of the band is Chasing the Light, and I'm just excited. I've been following along with you guys for a while, and releasing some great music. So I'm excited to hear your story. And with that in mind, you guys can answer individually or on your own. Just how did you guys get into music in the first place? Where did that all begin for you?
Yeah. So for me, I'm Abraham, by the way. I got into music. I'm the youngest of like 6 kids, and they're all musical. So I was kind of forced into it a little bit. Wow. In a way. Yeah. So my brother and I were playing. He played keys and I played piano. We started at like 9 years old. So really young, but I didn't really take it. I didn't love it until I was about a teenager. I think when I could like play with other people, and that's when I met Nate really, and we started hanging out a lot at youth camp. And yeah, that's kind of how I started music. Kind of got forced into it, just the nuts and bolts of playing guitar and singing and stuff. But then I just kind of took it to the next level. I guess obviously still super new at everything, but like next level, whatever that is.
15 years later.
Yeah.
Hey, any level that's beyond the last one is the next one. So
exactly.
That's
So
right.
we started playing, my brother, Nate, and we had a couple buddies just playing at youth camp. Those opportunities are so crazy when you're like 14 or 15 just to get that opportunity. But it's such a blessing because it gives you that kind of, I guess, push to like, we could really do something, and kind of fall in love with music like that, That's kind of how it started for me anyway. And that's where I met Nate and stuff.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar story growing up. My mom was very musical. She played piano and sang at the church that we went to. And then my dad actually, within the last 10 years, has taken up the drums. So that's been kind of cool to see him doing that. And he's really been digging that. But I kind of just grew up with instruments in the house. And so my earliest memories of playing music was I was at some kind of talent show at a school. And I saw some kid play a drum solo, and I'm sure it was like very bad now that I look back at it, but it struck me as something that I really wanted to do. And so I begged my parents for a drum set, and eventually there was a family in the church that had a son who had a drum set, and he basically thrashed it for the first week. And then it lay in the corner of their basement for like a few months after that. And they said, well, if you don't want it, we're just going to give it away. And they gave it to me. And it was like this really old CB drum set that was like, the heads were all beaten in and the cymbals were all broken. But like for me, that was like the coolest thing ever. And I remember just playing to CDs that I had on a CD player. And, if I got playing too hard, the CDs would skip. So I couldn't thrash too hard, but I would play along to CDs that I had. And from there, I picked up guitar and keys, and I'm still just trying to learn different things, kind of like Abe said, just accruing different musical ideas and talents as I go. But that was my beginning. And ever since then, I've just been enamored with creating music and writing and recording.
Man, I remember, when I was 14 and I started playing Green Day, like on bass. I'm a bass player first.
Yes.
And I was like, I can actually play with Mike Dent from Green Day right now. So I'm basically in the coolest club I could be in. So, but then like that eventually led me to playing at a local church, and same deal. Like I remember a moment where like being on a stage and we were just jamming on some song that was like an original idea, but it was like, I was like, wow, this is happening right now. And like,
right.
But those moments that seem so like minuscule or defining, where you feel that where God's like gives you a little glimpse of that power of like what music can do to us. So yeah, I totally relate to that. That's amazing. So you guys started kind of playing in youth group, but how did it go from like, just maybe youth band or that to, turning into a band? Like what's the story where you guys decided like, hey, this is a thing. And then you called it Chasing the Light. Like how did that all kind of come to be?
Yeah. So, man, this really distinct memory just of that camp comes to mind. And,
because there was like one specific camp that we did.
When it all started.
Yeah.
And so we had just asked the director, we're like, hey, we like rehearsed this one song. We're like, can we like do a special one night or whatever? And he's like, you know what? You guys just want to lead a whole night? And we're like, that blew our mind. I was like, oh no, I don't know how to do that, So you practice and practice and practice, but like that's where it started basically. I'm not sure how I got to be the singer, but I think it was just because everyone else was kind of at like a sitting instrument and I was playing guitar, so it kind of, I guess, worked just like logistically or whatever. But
you don't want the drummer singing with the cymbals just smashing by the microphone,
right? So
you could get to the mic first, so that was basically how you ended up being the singer.
Because we're all at the same level basically. Yeah. So anyway, that's where it started, and I remember it was so terrible. Like I think we had Chasing the Light as a name that we wanted, or we were throwing around some different ones, but kind of the camp director took off with God Squad. Like they literally called us the God Squad. And it just
we immediately had the opposite reaction. We were like, nah, we're good. That's not our name.
It was so bad. It was funny.
Yeah. So we ended up putting up like a little Facebook band page. And this was like, I want to say this was like back in 2009 or 10.
A couple years after that first, yeah.
And so Facebook was a lot different back then. And so there was like a lot of people that like commented on this poll that we put up with like 4 different band name options.
Yeah.
And I believe Chasing the Light was probably going to make it anyway.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we just wanted to see what the public thought.
Right. We wanted to get public affirmation.
Right.
We already knew what we wanted, but
so we ended up putting up that poll, and Chasing the Light was the name that stuck. And the funny thing about it is that for like the next 3 or 4 years, we never actually did anything like as a band. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, we're a band now, and then we never did anything.
Right.
Like we graduated and went to college, some started working, and then we kind of just were in this Chasing the Light thing that never actually happened
for a few years.
A few years, yeah.
So what ended up bringing you guys back together? And is it just the two of you guys now? Is that the band?
Yeah, so it's the two of us now. And back then, I went to college with Abe's brother Jonathan, and he was the keyboard player in the current lineup back then. And we ended up being roommates my second semester of college. And so we became like best friends, and we were always just kind of writing songs in our dorm room at the time. And then I had this epiphany that, because at the time I was going to college for some kind of musical degree, performance-based degree. And I had this epiphany that if I'm going to play music, I don't need a degree to play music. I can just play, and people will let me play without a degree. So, well, at least for the style of music that I was interested in. So I didn't go back after my first year. I moved back to Maine because I was at college in Missouri. And Abe was, I believe he was either just graduating or, is that right, Abe?
Yeah.
He had just graduated. So he was like, hey, dude, why don't you just come move in with me at my parents' house and we'll just work on this band thing. So that's what I did. And it was really off the cuff, but we just did that. And then Jonathan ended up dropping out the year after and came back, and we found another guy to play the drums, and that's when we really started to
I think it was
put work in on making Chasing the Light a real thing.
It was the end of 2013, I believe, is when we released our first single.
So once you guys kind of were like, hey, this is a real thing. We have the band name for years, but now we're actually like, what did that look like? Did you guys start like booking tours, like recording music? Like what was that whole process like?
Yeah. So that was, man, it's such a, you don't know what you don't know at the beginning. So it's like, you know, it's all cool. We're like learning how to play music together and stuff. And then we're like, man, how do we play a show? What does that look like? You know, like how do you even find a show?
I specifically remember having this meeting in our bedroom because Abe and I shared a bedroom.
Right.
I remember having this band meeting. There was like four of us in there.
Yeah.
Just like trying to brainstorm, like, how do you get a show? So I had like a connection with a guy that I was in a Christian band in the area at the time. Like my dad knew his uncle or something. So I got his number, and then there was some other guy that we vaguely knew about. And so we just cold called the two of them, and they just happened to be the perfect people to hook us up with shows.
Yeah. Wow. They pointed us in the direction of a guy who like just loved, had a lot of connections in the area and just like loved helping people out. And it just really worked. It worked out really well.
Yeah. You could say God definitely kind of had favor on us in that one, because we had no idea what we were doing.
No idea.
So then you guys just started like playing a ton of shows and like developing your chops and skills and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the first year, 2014, we, because we all have like full-time jobs as well.
Yeah.
And so we played, I think it was over 50 shows our first year, which is pretty good. That's like one a week,
That's a lot.
Obviously, some weeks we didn't have any, or next week we'd have 2 or 3 or whatever. But yeah, I know it seemed like a lot. We would basically just play anything anyone asked us to play, whether they even covered gas money. It was like, we just wanted to play, and we were happy to do it. And that's kind of the approach that we took. If we could do it, we would do it. And I think that was really helpful, like just to figure out how to do things, play in different situations. Yeah, it was really formative for actually playing live.
Yeah, I think by the end of the first 2 years, we had done over 150 shows, I want to say. I counted it up one time, trying to think of all like the little places we played and just like every trip we went on. And I think it was around 150 shows.
Wow.
So looking back on that, that was like super just informative of how to act as a professional, not that we were professionals, but just like how to be presented, in front of an audience, and then also how to like interact with the people who were running the stages and managing the shows and the promoters, and just how to conduct ourselves and not be annoying basically when we show up,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no replacement for stage time. I mean, and there's only one way to get it. And so you guys probably were a lot different from before and after those 150 shows. I mean, that's a ton of blood, sweat, and tears, literally. So like, did you guys play like originals? Were you writing the whole process? Are you doing like kind of covers, or like what was that as you were moving through those 150 shows? Yeah.
So basically we had put out one song. Our goal was 2013. We were going to record an album in the summertime, a full length album.
And this is not knowing anything about recording or recording software at the time.
That's okay.
Right. So it's a lofty goal. We didn't realize it was that lofty, but anyway, we had one song, and we released it. I think it was wintertime, end of the year 2013, and 2014 we started reaching out to, or we reached out to that guy, and we started kind of booking shows from there.
We recorded 5 songs on our own that year.
Right.
Yeah, and we put that out as a self-released EP as well. And that's something that you can't find online anywhere at this point. It was one of those things. It was a labor of love, but it's just not something that, unless you're a really old Chasing the Light fan, you're never going to hear that ever again.
Maybe a redone version, potentially.
So we put that out, and then at that point we had enough songs, between the 5 that we had recorded, and then a couple others that we had written, to where we could just play all original music for the most part. And that was really our goal, honestly. Like, I remember specifically always wanting to play as much original music as possible. And I don't know if that was, thinking about it right now, I think that was probably because we just looked up to people who basically did that, the Switchfoots, or like Need to Breathe, or even Third Day back in the day when I was a kid. I loved them. And like,
that was one of those bands I played when I was 14 too. Same deal.
Yeah. Yep. So it was just like, we looked up to them and their songwriting and their performing. So that was our goal, was just to be like them, and to us, they did originals, so we had to do originals.
Yeah, totally. So after those 3 years of, playing a ton, how did you guys go? Because I see on Spotify, you guys have definitely some music out there. when you said you self-release, do you guys record your own stuff as well and writing? What's your process now with the two of you guys, and about the new song and stuff that came out? Like, how has it kind of evolved over the past 4 or 5 years? I mean, you guys have been at this for a while.
Yeah, so we have one release, an EP on Spotify right now that I believe was back in 2016. We went to a studio up here in Windham and we recorded that with a professional engineer and producer. And we put that out in 2017. And then after that, I believe it was in 2018, the band kind of came to a halt because at that point, different members had different, places in life and goals and things that they wanted to do. Yeah. And it never really occurred to Abe and I that we could just keep going on our own. It was just like, oh, okay, I guess we're just done. Right. And so that's how I ended up. I haven't mentioned this on the podcast yet, but I ended up playing drums for Collington because, once Chasing the Light was over, I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life now? And I just happened to have met James. No, I don't think I'd even met him yet. I just saw on Facebook that he was going to be recording at the same studio that we had recorded our EP at. And so I reached out to him on Facebook and I was like, hey, man, I take photos. Would you want me to come hang out at the studio with you and just take some photos while you're recording? I may not actually have been very good at taking photos. It was like the first time. Yeah, I didn't. Took photos. He didn't have to know that I borrowed my dad's camera and just came to hang out, But that's how I got my foot in the door, and we just we hit it off and we became really great friends. And then at some point he needed a drummer, so I hopped in and started playing drums and recording with him and just touring and doing whatever. I believe it was 2019, late 2019. It was a Collington event, actually, that we ended up, it was kind of more of a worship gig, and Collington is more of an alternative rock guy, but he had gotten this worship gig. And so we kind of mixed it up a little because I've also done some worship leading. And so he was like, hey, dude, you want to help me lead this worship event? I was like, down to do it, but I was like, well, then who's going to play the drums? And Abe also plays the drums really well. So I recommended him to James, and he thought that was a great idea. So in comes Abe to play the drums for Collington at this worship event. And while we're out there, because it was out in Illinois, while we're out there doing this worship event, James is like, hey, dudes, why aren't you doing Chasing the Light? Because, you guys had a lot of momentum back when you were doing it. And I've heard some of the songs, stuff that you've been writing, Nate, recently. Why aren't you actually doing this as Chasing the Light? And I think the light bulb just went off for both of us at that point. And it was like, oh, yeah, I guess we could do it, just the two of us. That kind of lit a fire under us. And for the last year, ever since the lockdown started, we've basically just been recording and writing at my little home studio here in Maine. Yeah, we've recorded some songs, and the first one just got released. It's just crazy what you can do nowadays with modern recording technology. It's all been self-engineered. It's just been a blast, man. I've really enjoyed learning, the recording process even deeper than what I had previously, and just trying to sharpen my skills as much as possible. Yeah, the songs have been really fun to make, and the latest single just seems to have had a really good response. So we're just really having a great time with it. I
mean, it just came out and it's already has over 6,000 streams in just a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, I think so. Abe, do you know what the numbers are? Because I actually haven't looked at it recently.
No, I've got it pulled up here. Actually, it's 16,000.
Hey.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So you guys are killing it. You didn't even know it.
Nice.
And I mean, that's huge, because that can take years if never, and it's only been out for 3 weeks. So I mean, that's huge. So with that in mind, I'm definitely a geek when it comes to strategies and stuff. What did you guys do to promote the single, and what have you been doing? I mean, how did you get 16,000 streams? Because a lot of people would love to be able to do that same thing. So what did you guys, what was your planning and prep going into that?
Yeah, man. Well, for our first, initial thought was that we have to present it in as much of an eye-catching way as possible, because there's so much music out there right now that it's really hard to be noticed unless, it's something that's going to grab people's attention immediately. Mm-hmm. So we actually recorded 2 different versions of it. They're not extremely different, but the Spotify version we actually cut most of the intro, the musical intro for the full length version that's on the video. And we strategically just had the vocal come in almost immediately on the Spotify version. That way people immediately just hear vocals. Because I think I've had conversations with people, and that's something that really seems to grab people's attention, is when they hear lyrics and vocals almost immediately. So that was one way that we kind of thought about our Spotify marketing. And then we also wanted to have, for other platforms, we wanted to have video content that we could use to push it, because at least for me, I know that I always pay attention more when I have something that catches my eye. If there's a cool piece of, album artwork, that might do it. But oftentimes, a cool video really does the trick for me. So that's kind of what we did. And we found a guy that was really great in the area, and just kind of came up with a vision for the visuals, and kind of just planned that way. So that was another strategy. Abe, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously the first thing was like wanting the music to be really just quality as it can be, because people might like your family and friends might share your music because they're proud of you or whatever. They want to give you a little hand up, but like, yeah, just a little attaboy, and support you or whatever. But it's like that only goes so far, obviously, and obviously super grateful for them no matter what. But
Sure.
if it can be shareable to like anyone who listens to it, that's huge. So that was the big thing, obviously. And then it was just like, I'm just gonna tell everyone and their brother about this release. Like, hey, if you here's the pre-save link, to Spotify. That was huge. Like getting the pre-save link, like texting everyone on my phone, basically. I know it honestly takes more time than I thought it would, but just reaching out, word of mouth, and really just personally reaching out to people.
Yeah, man. Like you were reaching out to a lot of people. Like even like I believe actually we got your contact from James, because he had done the podcast and he was aware of you. And so he was like, hey, you should reach out to this guy, because he's been, really supportive of indie artists. And so we just reached out to you as well, and it's just like trying to reach out to as many people as possible online, even if you haven't met them, because you just never know where that'll lead to,
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't take like, of course it takes time because you have to repeat the process so much. But like, I know this is maybe, I don't know, but like, at the end of the day, it's like people just like tapping their phone a couple times to support you. It's not like this big thing.
Right,
You're not like, please give me $1,000 and like run a mile. It's like, hey, can you tap your phone a couple times? You're probably going to do it anyways.
So funny.
Like just do it towards, you know what I mean? So like,
yeah, definitely.
I mean, you can't do it like every day, but when you guys are pushing a release, you haven't had a song come out in a bit, and then it's like, people want to help you, and it's like all I have to do to help you is that. So like obviously it worked though, because you don't have 16,000 family members and you got all those streams so far, I mean,
Abe did say he had a big family,
But
well, apparently it's all them.
No, man, that's so true though. Like I'm the type of person that doesn't love to just like cold reach out to people, but like Abe said, we wanted the song to be good enough so that if somebody were to like just check it out just based off, a message, that they would actually like it and it wouldn't be a nuisance. That was a big thing for us, is like, we have to make sure that it's not, it's up to par. Totally. And like, I'll say from my experience, like you guys reached out to me about it and I gladly put it on my playlist, like right at the top, because it sounds great. I want to support you guys, whether, we're not really meeting ish till now, but like the way you approached it was great. So, I'm sure people can learn from that. Like, as long as you do it in a care, you don't like, you're not just spam like, hey, I'm going to send it to every single person I've ever, like, you're sending it to your contacts, to people that It's not just like, because I will say, like, I get a lot of DMs where it's just like a link to somebody's like video, and I'm like, what? Like that's no way to start this, and I'm a pretty like, I'm a very like open person where it's like, I want to support everybody, but like, don't send just a link. That's silly. Yeah. I don't know. Abe handled a lot of that as far as like the reaching out, but I don't know. What do you think, Abe? You were telling me like you just don't want to be like annoying when you reach out to people.
Yeah. I don't know why. That's like, It's a big thing in my life. I just don't want to be annoying. But anyway,
that's a band shirt,
right?
Yeah. Try not to be annoying, please. Yeah. But yeah, I think, I mean, even for myself, obviously I'm not huge or whatever, but if, if I feel like it's spam, I don't want to even read the whole thing. You know what I mean? So right, I just, even though it is a lot of copy and paste, like I don't want it to be like, hey, this is all about, I hate that, so
totally.
It's almost like the copy and paste is just a function to make it faster, but you still
really
want it to
think about what you're saying.
Yeah, you still want the message to be thoughtful and actually like pointed toward the person you're sending it to.
Yeah, I mean, when I've reached out to hundreds of playlist curators, like there's definitely times where I'm copy and pasting a message and changing some of the key details because I'm not going to like retype 500 characters over and over again that are exactly the same, but that initial message is definitely with care, so I totally get that. And and like I said, what you guys did was effective from my experience. So, and obviously it's done well, it's only just begun. So I think it's awesome what you guys have done. So, with that in mind, like what I always like to ask people, like, what's a piece of wisdom that you'd give to your younger selves, maybe you're getting started, or like, what would you tell your younger selves? There's so much value in that to anyone listening, like as far as has helped you along your journey and what could help them.
Man, there's a lot of pieces of advice. There's so. Let me see. What's a good one?
Pick your top 25.
What comes to mind? I don't know why. It's just like. It really strikes me, especially these days, is like, don't take yourself too seriously. I think a lot of times, we try to put out our best foot forward and we try to put like our game face on for social media or whatever. Obviously, you want to do the best thing you can do. But at the end of the day, I think people really appreciate authenticity as well. So don't think you're too good to post something, that might be silly or in the moment. Or I don't know, I guess that's just one instance, but like, don't think you're too good to take a small gig or just a random gig, just be adaptable and don't take yourself too seriously. I guess that's one thing I'd say.
Yeah. I think two things that come to mind immediately is like, one thing we did really well when we were younger was exactly that. We were not afraid to just play wherever for whatever price, even if it was free, and kind of like you had mentioned earlier, any stage time is great because it just gives you a chance to hone your skills and to develop as an artist. And I think perhaps one thing that I would say to my younger self, looking back now, that I could have improved on greatly was just organizational skills. I remember doing, a really big festival and we didn't have any band merch to sell because we just hadn't thought about it until like the week before. And it's so like, with a little bit of organization and pre-planning, we could have perhaps, actually made some money and sold some gear. And we were just like
an amazing festival too.
Yeah. We were just like scrambling to find t-shirts, to get somebody to print for us. And, I think just as an overall life skill, man, just being organized is a great thing. As an artistic type of person, that is a weak point for me. Like I'll literally be cleaning my house, right? And I'll be doing the dishes and then I'll get distracted midway and think, oh, I need to go put my laundry in. And then I'll go do that. And then halfway through that, it's like, oh, the living room needs a little bit of straightening up, All
the while the water's still running.
Exactly. And then you look back and like everything in the house is still half finished. And so, that can be very helpful when it comes to like coming up with creative new ideas. But as far as being an independent artist, nobody's going to be managing you. You have to be the guy that's on point and reaching out to people and making sure that the emails are getting answered and, the people are getting reached out to and, making sure you're uploading your music to your digital streaming platforms on time. And so, just organization, man, is a great key.
Man, I think that's really good. And it's definitely something that like we miss a lot because I think the reason we miss it a lot is because like, it's not the fun part. It's not the creative part. It's like the nuts and bolts, which is like, we don't want to do that. We just want to write cool songs and like sing them with people, like that. And not to say like, that's bad. That's great. That's why we got into it. But we didn't get into it for the most part because we wanted to like make sure we had our merch,
Right.
ready for sale on time. Like that's something that you learn along the way. But I think, yeah, just a preparation. And one thing I've noticed too is like when I give myself space and not fill up every second of my day, then I actually have more room to think about things like that. Because I've definitely get into the habit, and I'm sure that I'm not alone in this. Like, you just start doing so many things, like you said. Like when you were saying what you're just saying, how you're like cleaning your house, or doing your, and like I'll be like bouncing a session, and I'll be like, oh, I have like 2.5 minutes before that's ready to put for mastering, so I'm going to start this email right now. And then it's like, oh, I might as well send the email. Oh, the master's done, so I'm going to jump that. And it's like next time I'm like 4 things at once, and it's like, what am I probably missing? Or not doing as well as I should be because I'm so distracted,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Like, the organizational part is key. It's like start something, finish it, move on to the next thing. Even though it's so tempting to do it all, I mean, we literally have multitasking built into our tablets and computers. So it's like, that's how things are going.
Wow. Yeah.
But I feel like that's not the way we were built,
Right.
So like, I love that. And that's a huge reminder
So
just
good.
to me personally. It's like, man, organization just comes from like being one track minded sometimes is okay.
Yeah, man. I like what you just said there too about giving yourself space though, because that's another thing that I could have improved on as a younger person was just like not being so hard on myself when I didn't live up to the expectations that I had for myself, and whether it was my organizational skills or, maybe I didn't write X amount of songs last month and I thought I was going to or needed to. You have to have space to live as well and not just be like so locked into the music that it just like you forget to live.
Yeah, totally. Man, that's really good. So what's the best way for people to connect with you? And you guys have dropped one single that's doing great so far. You guys have any other music in the works coming out soon?
Yeah, man. We've got a lot coming down the pipeline. Yeah, it's going to be a full year. We really we were thinking when we were wanting to release music to just be intentional about releases and really planning it out as well. So yeah, as of right now, we've got a bunch recorded already and ready to go, just planning out releases. All the nuts and bolts are coming together right now for those.
Yeah.
So
yeah, man, we just had a kind of a little planning session. We sat down with our calendar and, just looking at what would be a strategically good time to release certain songs. Like there's one song that we wrote that's kind of more of a, I guess you could say, an Easter-ish theme. So we're going to release that around Easter, just different choices like that. We're trying to drop things at the right moments. There's a song that's a little bit more upbeat and feels kind of summery almost. So we're going to put that one out, more in when things get warmed up and people are ready to be outside and just driving around with music blasting.
That's the thing is like taking that time to plan, like now you already have that stuff set. So it's like, okay, well, now that's the main things out of the way, like what do you do to support it? You have so much more time and energy to put into that stuff because of the organizational side, man. So I love that. So people are ready for all this music coming out. Like what's the best way for people to follow you? What social media platforms you hang out on? Give them I'll put it all in the description, but give them all the details.
Sweet. Yeah. So on Facebook, of course, we have a Facebook band page. If you look up Chasing the Light, we're out there. And then on Instagram, we are at official CTL. I don't know why that was the name that we came up with, but that's what it is. We're on Twitter as well. I'm not such a huge Twitter guy, but we are on there and we do post updates and stuff.
And before we go, last thing I always want to do is pray over everybody. So I'm going to pray for you guys.
Awesome.
God, thank you so much for these guys Chasing the Light, Nate and Abraham. What a great story of obedience and just being flexible to the calling, even though the way the band has looked and from where it formed and over these years, it may be different now than it was. Every single one of those memories and every single one of those performances and songwriting sessions has all brought them to this point now to where they're releasing music at the highest and best level they have yet so far. God, I just pray for continued inspiration. I pray for continued guidance in everything that they do, God, as they continue to follow after you, Lord, and seek your face for the particular path and journey you put before them, God. I just pray that this year, as they're being more intentional than ever about when and how to release this music, God, that it just gets to fresh ears and fresh people, so that way they can continue to inspire and ultimately lead people back to you and all that you're doing through them, God. We thank you so much for your presence, your direction, and this gift that is music. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
We want to help reach as many Christian indie artists and songwriters as possible, and one way we can do that is with your help. So if you could take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes, that would be so appreciated. This is how the iTunes algorithm will push this content out to more and more Christian indie artists and songwriters. So like I said, if you could just take a couple seconds, leave us a review, that would be so awesome, means so much to us, and we would really appreciate it.